I wanted to introduce all of you to a young woman from a country in the world that is doing some of the most innovative things in technology, that is really leapfrogging a bunch of what we're building here in the United States, and that is the country of Kenya. Catherine Kipsang, at Kathy_Kipsang on Twitter, is she blew me away when we were talking before this, because she sat down and she said, when I'm 45, I'm going to be president of Kenya, which I fully believe she will do. But before she does that small thing, she's going to do something very, very big, but very, very simple, which is she's teaching herself how to program, and she's joining forces with another engineer and a designer to work on a service to surface more of the government's information and data to Kenyans. And to describe that, Catherine.
Well, good afternoon. You can only imagine how starstruck I was when I met Jack Dorsey, and I think I still am, so hopefully I can do this successfully. Well, before I dive into the issue of transparency, I'd like to tell you a short story. In 2007, Kenya was engulfed in post-election violence following the alleged rigging of the elections and the hasty swearing in of our current president. I remember being very scared. I remember huddling with my family in the corridor to avoid stray bullets. And I remember being very scared that we'd all be caught up in a war. Well, fortunately, we were able to pull through, but this memory stuck with me. I was very upset and very angry. I was upset that Kenyans who had lived together for so long and whose children had grown up together would start killing each other. And I started wondering why. Why would this happen? Well, I identified several reasons. Well, historically, Kenya, like other African countries, is an entity that was created by the colonialists. Economically, Kenya has high poverty and unemployment rates, unequal distribution of land and resources, and a weak social welfare system. And socially, and most importantly, is that Kenya is made up of 42 major ethnic groups, which makes it very hard to foster national unity. But I also identified countries that have been dealt with the same cards and have been able to pull through successfully, like Malaysia. And I wondered, why is this the reason? Well, I think you all know the answer. I think the one factor that differentiates successful and unified states from unsuccessful ones is leadership. Voting in the right leaders does not simply guarantee you a job when you graduate or pension when you retire, but it actually might save your life, and Kenyans learned this the hard way. Well, in 2007, when we had the violence, we had two ethnic groups fighting each other. Well, the ethnic rivalry in Kenya did not start yesterday. It's always been there, even before we gained independence. But the ethnic hatred and tension we see today has only been fueled by ourselves and our leaders who continue to use the divide and rule strategy. So, if Kenyans know this, why are they not voting in, better leaders? Well, there are several reasons. Well, Kenya still has very high poverty rates. We have an uncoordinated middle class, and the same old people keep running for office, so we have limited choices. And finally, we have low civic education rates. If you think about these reasons, they seem very huge and almost insurmountable. But there's one that we can actually change. That is the level of civic education in our countries. And that is what I focused on, and that is why I'm here, to tell you about GiveNumbers.com. GiveNumbers.com is a social platform that puts the profile of each Kenyan politician online. On GiveNumbers.com, you can see the information on each politician, the education background, their achievements, the scandals they've been implicated in. You can edit the information, and you can see how favorable they are. This might not seem very revolutionary, but in Kenya, getting information on leaders is quite challenging. Well, on the government website, we only have 55 profiles out of 214 members of parliament. On GiveNumbers.com, you have the profiles of 214, the total. Yeah, you have all of them there. Well, with Give Numbers and the information we have online, we hope to change the way Kenyans think about their leaders and how they interact with them. We hope that they will start focusing on their attributes, such as their education and their track record, and their social and economic policies, rather than their ethnic background. Since we launched Give Numbers 4 months ago, we've gotten an overwhelming response. Just a few weeks ago, we were able to convince Ledamo Lekina, who's running for governor in Narok, to send us his manifesto, and we hope that this will be the beginning of open dialogue between Kenyans and their leaders. You might be wondering, how did we start Give Numbers? It seems like a very big project. Well, I came up with the idea of Give Numbers in my dorm room, and I found a friend of mine who knows a little about computer programming, and we spent an entire summer working on it. My friend and I, we are the founders, the staffers, and the advertisers of Give Numbers. What I'm trying to say is that in this socially interconnected world, you don't need to have a lot of money or support to start a project like Give Numbers. So I want you to think, as One Young World community, of similar projects that you can start in your country that actually increase the level of transparency in governance in your countries. I know that there are a lot of people who are tired of the corrupt politicians that we have and the false rhetoric that we keep hearing from our leaders. I can only imagine how much impact we'd all have if we all have Give Numbers for each of our countries represented here. Thank you.